United States may be more of an outlier than necessarily the norm. As he goes on, he uses a good source that studied 130 studies from 100 countries. In the end, the finding of the study that looked over all these studies and tried to find any common ground was that the implementations of the laws targeting multiple firearm restrictions is associated with reduction in firearm deaths. So as we can see here, he's basically using this source that's saying that to go ahead and back up his what he's trying to say. And as we go on, he uses fairly good sources to kind of to back up his arguments, his main argument in the end is that the more guns means the more death. The only issue with that he doesn't seem to use is one of the right wing's arguments. So next I'm going to go ahead and go over to my another source, which is a completely 100% unbiased source. It's called justfacts.com. If you look into it, it uses some very good sources, the Gallup polls. It goes both ways. It talks about both sides. It doesn't even go both ways, though. It just brings up straight sources, straight facts. But in this, one of the things that it talks about is that people, it says, it found over the previous 5 years at least 0.5% of household members who had used guns for self-defense during this a situation in which they thought someone almost certainly would have been killed. So basically, these guys were using guns as self-defense, and that amounts to 162,000 incidents per year. So that's one of the reasons we can imagine that the amount of deaths going up, the amount of death going up is gun violence death is because a lot of people are using guns for self-defense. So he's in a way shining this in a negative light when there actually is there's not a positive side to it, but it's not all negative. People using guns for self-defense rather than just constantly killing people. It's not always gun violence in a negative sense. And again, I'm not on either side. I'm not here to say which one's right or wrong. I really have no opinion on it, but that's just some of the straight facts about it. And now we're going to go ahead and look over at this other source, which in The Hill, it's a very right-wing source. And right away, we can see that this guy is using a lot more mudsliding than the other source that we were looking at just now. Some of the things that he talks about is the words are inadequate to describe the horror of the Las Vegas shootings, very tragic shooting that happened. Anyway, it says, what is most shocking, however, is the liberals' evil realized is merely another opportunity to score political points. So he's definitely right away talking about, the left wing, all they care about is, getting their agenda across, and they're using this to get their agenda across. The dead were still being identified when liberal politicians, celebrities, pundits, and activists began blaming the carnage on anyone who did not endorse the standard of left-wing agenda. So right away, you can tell that he is definitely he's definitely trying to, mudsliding on the left wing. Another thing that we're seeing from him is right here. We can see that he has a sweeping statement in a way. It says, and this is a statement that could never be proven. This is more of a logical fallacy than it is one of the things that we're talking about. But it says, anyone seriously concerned about violence knows that none of the usual panaceas would do much to reduce gun deaths. Gun restriction in the countries such as Australia and Great Britain didn't end gun-related crimes. Well, that's a very sweeping statement that, gun restrictions didn't end gun-related crimes. That it's in a way that there's always going to be some gun-related crimes no matter what you do. And that was kind of an interesting way. He's obviously right here having a very sweeping statement that that's the case, even though that isn't necessarily always the case. So these are just two of the sources that I've looked at already, and we're going to go ahead and look at some more, as well as look a little bit deeper into this one. But I want to go ahead and move on real quick to look at some of the other ones, and then we might come back to this one for a second. But already we can see that The Hill and Fox have far, far, far different sides on this view, and that's a big part of the fact that one of them is right-wing and one of them is left-wing. So right away you have to understand that when you're reading these sources, you need to look at who's writing them, because the facts cannot all be presented at the same time, and they can present in a certain way. They seem legit, even if they aren't necessarily 100% giving you everything you need to know. They're partially slanted. Alright guys, actually, so real quick, I just want to finish up on The Hill and this article and compare it to my unbiased source real quick and just say a couple more things. So one thing that I really want to mention about biased sources is that they're always going to have legitimate facts. They always are. But it's not, or in most cases, especially sources like The Hill or a lot of these, they're not just going to be completely fake news. And that's not what you really got to look out for, because fake news a lot of times can be pretty obvious. If not, it'll usually be exposed over time. But with sources like The Hill and these other ones, they're not fake news because they're reporting on actual things. But the things that they're reporting on are slanted, and that's another case. So most of the sources I'm talking about are going to be slanted. So for example, you're seeing things like 2/3 of gun-related deaths are from suicides, or, as I mentioned before, the one that about anybody is seriously concerned, Australia and Great Britain didn't end gun-related crimes. Well, that's true, but like I said, there's other things, there's other examples. For example, if you look at this graph, the handgun ban, this is a graph of the handgun ban, and then, it talks about murders and that happened because of it, and manslaughters. So, obviously the handgun ban didn't do anything in 1975, but if you look at this handgun ban in 2007 around then, it definitely did drop the rate of the crimes. Also, if we go ahead and look at just the death rate that came from actual guns, we see that 73% of deaths, of the 15,000 murders were committed with firearms. So it's not necessarily that The Hill is not telling the truth or anything, or that they're being wrong. And same with this source as well. The Fox, they're not being wrong. They're not dishonest about their sources for the most part. It's more so that they're not going to tell you the full story because they have their own agenda and they're biased about it. So in this case, you just have to make sure you understand that, and you're looking at more than one source to understand the full truth. Because it's easy to look at some of these facts and make your conclusions without understanding every side of every fact. Alright guys, so the last two sources we're going to go ahead and go over right now are from The Guardian and Fox News. And so both of these sources are very opposite-ended. The Guardian is far left, Fox News is far right on our chart. And both these sources, I don't know how you call these sources. You can call them biased for sure, because both sources are going to be reporting about the terribly bad side in The Guardian's case and the good side about gun control. And they are 100% using emotionalism, and that is their number one way to try to pull you over to their side. To me, this is like one of the most biased and like the worst ways you can report actual news. But this is I guess it's just whatever the reader wants to read. But we're gonna go ahead and get straight into it. So the title of it is "I Lost a Part of My Soul: The Mothers Who Lost Their Children to Gun Violence." So this is completely going to be focusing on the gun violence. These are people who want more gun control. Right away, we see more emotionalism. And this is a statistic, and it's true, like I said. It's a true statistic, but completely relying on emotionalism. It says, every day in America, 7 kids are killed from gun violence. From Sandy Hook, New York, the mothers who grieve for them are trying to do something about it. So if we go down, we see that this is the first mother, and she wants to work on gun reform because of her son's death. We see that she says, it's right. I want to honor them by getting their voices out there. I'm sorry. So this is all of it. It's a very true source. It's very sad, and it definitely pulls on your emotional strings, your feelings. This is another one. The quote on the top is, "I lost a part of my soul." This was another child who died. I'm not going to read over every single one, but, I didn't talk about how I felt for 17 years. This was another woman whose son died, whose son died in the 1999, in Brooklyn from gun violence as well. It goes on and on. There is quite a lot, and they always put in the quote, the quote at the top, which just, to me, just kind of confirms the more of the bias. But, these sources, I would hope that you could tell that there is a media bias here, that these people are playing on your emotions on your side. If they were trying to just get the story of the need for gun control out, then they could just put up statistics on both sides. Really. That would be an unobjective source. And even though this is biased, but what we can also see is that this is also true, and there is some truth in it, and it is very sad. And it's something that we need to consider. So that's one thing I want to get into next, is that even though a source is biased, doesn't mean it isn't worth reading, because there is some truth in left-wing and far right-wing sources that they are true, even if they're biased or they're trying to play on your emotions. That it might be important for you to understand that this is the case, that these mothers are struggling from that. And then, so we're going to move on to the next one. But that's kind of the important part I want to go over, is that, that the guardian is going to be playing on your emotion, and they're going to be playing this part of the story. They're going to be telling you about it. And you have to wonder, how much do they really just want to get across gun control, and how much do they believe in that case? Because a lot of times people are being biased, or they're only talking about the need for gun control because they believe so strongly in it, because of things like this that happen. And it's hard to look at the other side when such terrible things happen to somebody, no matter what the other side statistic says. So now we're going to look at the Fox News side, and this is a good side. This is very similar to the last source, except for it's playing on your emotions, but it's also not playing on your emotions in a negative way. This is talking about a guy. It says, a good guy with a gun has saved many lives in Florida. Something the media rarely report. Something the media rarely report. Yep. And so, it talks about this man who there was a shooter, and this happened in Pottsville, Florida, and he was opening on a back-to-school event attended by over 150 students, as it says. And this man, the only person that was injured was the attacker. This man with a handgun ended up shooting the attacker in the head before he was able to hurt any of the students or land any of the bullets, before any of the bullets hit any of the students, thankfully. And this is by Fox News. Here's the highlighted article. Law enforcement officers can't be everywhere, so the presence of armed citizens is vital to provide an instant response to attackers. So this is talking about why it's important to have, no gun control, or, have less gun control, because there's good people with guns too. It says, in fact, and this is kind of interesting, it's in a way attacking. It says, the media has rarely given national news coverage to incidents like this, but responsible gun owners have stepped forward in many times before to save lives. In fact, concealed handgun permits holders have prevented dozens of mass shootings. And if you look at this, it's a lot like this source, except for it's talking about all the shootings and all the people that have been saved because of the gun, of less gun control and being able to have a concealed carry gun. So I just wanted to bring up these two sources as well. Obviously you're never going to see The Guardian posting about this, and you're never going to see Fox News posting about the mothers whose children have passed away because of gun violence. And this is the last thing I want to kind of talk about, is that and like I said, this source, it's going to be pretty easy to tell right away that they're using emotionalism, and that they are in a way biased source. But you also have to understand that, like I said, at some points that's okay, but just if you're trying to make an argument, a legitimate argument for why it should be going away, this is completely on feeling. So it doesn't have logical reasons of why it's the best or worst. This is just, in this case, the best for these people whose lives might have been saved, or the worst for these people who lost their children. But it's not necessarily the best for everyone, because it was the worst for them. So this is just a report on a few people. But when deciding overall, you have to think about what's best for everyone. So yeah, that's going to be those last two sources. Wow, guys. So I am really sorry that ended up being so long. Really didn't mean for it to be a 30-minute video. It was supposed to be more like 10 minutes, but it took me a long time to just explain all the media literacy information that you need to know for you to really understand how to judge those sources, and I felt like that was kind of an important part of my project. So I really hope that you enjoyed. Mr. Slavok, super sorry. This is only for you. I don't know why I'm acting like I have a YouTube channel or something, because I really don't. God, what am I doing here? I'm going to put something at the beginning that says like, yo, Mr. Slavok, the first 10 minutes, you might just want to skip over it, because you already know this, obviously. Anyway, I hope you like my shirt. I just changed it. I know I was wearing this black one. No, it's been one take. Anyway, sorry to waste your time. It's already been so long. Alright. Hey, I hope you have a great day. I'm just saying, like, I miss you so much. Seriously, favorite teacher right here. For some reason, I thought I had to post it on YouTube. Silly me. Anyway, I miss you so much. I'm really sorry it's 30 minutes. Like I said, I'm going to put something at the beginning to skip the beginning. You're already going to see it, though, so you're going to know. So, and it's my show to wearing this shirt. You're like, what the heck? Okay, anyway. Sorry, going over. Anyway, miss you so much. Bye. Seriously, miss you. Bye.